Picture this. It's 1945. You are thousands of feet over Germany, in a sky so black you can't tell where the clouds end and the ground begins. And somewhere in that total darkness, two remarkable airmen are on the hunt.
I mean, just let this sink in for a second. Two men who should have been dead flying together in a plane they had named Borrowed Time. That name? It wasn't some kind of dark joke. For them, it was the absolute truth.
So, who were these guys? Who were these hunters on Borrowed Time? Let's dive in and meet the two men at the very heart of this incredible story. Okay, so on the left, you've got the pilot, Hermann Ernst, and on the right, his radar operator, Edward Kopsel. Now here's the part that's just unbelievable. Each one of them was the sole survivor of a completely separate, fatal plane crash that killed every other member of their crew. Can you imagine? That shared, tragic experience created this incredible bond, a foundation of trust built on the idea that they were living a life they were never supposed to have. Now, a bond like that needs a pretty special kind of machine, and boy, did they have one. It was a weapon perfectly designed for their unique, terrifying mission, the Blind Black Widow. This was the Northrop P-61 Black Widow. It was the Allies' answer to a really serious problem. We're talking about a 13-ton monster, the very first American aircraft designed from the ground up for one thing and one thing only: to hunt in total darkness. And it was armed with 4 absolutely devastating 20mm cannons. But here's the fundamental problem, right? The thing that made this whole endeavor so terrifying. The pilot flew completely, totally blind. In the pitch-black sky over enemy territory, a pilot's most important sense, their sight, was gone. Useless. So how in the world did they see? Well, they didn't. They used this, the SCR-720 radar. This thing was a 400-pound system that basically acted as the plane's electronic eyes. It turned an enemy aircraft miles away into a simple green blip on a screen. It gave them a way to see in the dark.
And all that technology brings us to the human element, which, honestly, was everything. This was a partnership built on something incredible: absolute trust at 300 miles per hour.
Just look at this process. It's like a tense, high-stakes dance. It starts with ground control getting a faint contact. Then Kopsel, the radar operator, has to find that tiny blip on his scope. From that moment on, he becomes the pilot's eyes. He's calling out headings, altitude, and range over the intercom. And Ernst, the pilot, he's flying purely on the sound of Kopsel's voice. And get this, he'd often fire those cannons into pure black emptiness, just having complete faith that his partner had put an enemy plane right where he said it would be.
I mean, think about the difference here. It's night and day, literally. A day fighter pilot relies on their eyesight, on instinct, on seeing their enemy. But a night fighter pilot, they had their instruments and what you could almost call a religious faith in their partner. They weren't fighting another airplane, they were hunting a ghost on a screen.
Their first real combat tests were against those terrifying German V-1 flying bombs. Then, after D-Day, they got their first manned kill, a Hinkel bomber, over France. But for months, success was really hard to come by. Finding targets was incredibly frustrating. One source described it perfectly. It was like hunting individual fish in a dark ocean. And then, in the brutal winter of 1944, everything changed. The war and their mission was about to catch fire in the Ardennes.
In December of '44, the Germans launched their massive last-ditch offensive, the Battle of the Bulge. And suddenly, the Luftwaffe threw everything they had left into the night sky. That dark, empty ocean, it was now swarming with targets. But oh man, the conditions were just horrific. The crews of the 422nd Squadron were facing this brutal winter with below-zero temperatures that caused constant mechanical failures. Add to that pilot exhaustion from flying mission after mission and the very real threat of getting shot down by your own nervous anti-aircraft gunners, the environment itself was just as deadly as the enemy. And yet, in all that chaos, they started to thrive. On the night of December 26th, Ernst and Kopsel shot down a Ju-88 bomber. In fact, their squadron had its best night of the war, destroying 5 enemy planes. They were sharpening their skills in the most intense crucible imaginable. After the Bulge, the skies went quiet again, for about 2 months. But the Germans had one more fight left in them, and this brings us to the absolute climax of their story, the ace-making night. On the night of March 1st, 1945, seemingly out of nowhere, the Luftwaffe came back in force. German air activity just spiked.
Ernst and Kopsel took off on what they thought was just going to be another routine patrol. They had no idea.
The speed of what happened next is just astounding. At 1:10 in the morning, bam, they engage and damage a German Bf-110. Less than an hour later, they intercept and completely destroy a Ju-87 Stuka. And then, get this, just 7 minutes after that, they destroy a second Stuka. We're talking 3 enemy encounters in just over an hour. It's unbelievable.
So when you add it all up, their final score comes to 5 confirmed aircraft kills, plus that 1 V-1 flying bomb. That total of 6 officially made them aces. And not just any aces, they were the highest-scoring American night fighter crew in the entire European theater. But, you know, like all wartime stories, this one has an ending. And it's an ending that came just as quickly as their success. Let's look at what happened as their legacy began to fade to black.
Just a few months later, in May 1945, the war in Europe was over. The 422nd Squadron was inactivated. The incredible P-61 Black Widows that they flew, they were unceremoniously flown to depots and scrapped. And Ernst and Kolksel, these 2 men whose lives had been so completely connected in the dark, well, they just went back to their own separate civilian lives.
And this history just vanished, almost as quickly as it was made. Of the more than 700 Black Widows that were built, today only 4 complete airframes survive anywhere in the world. Their plane, Borrowed Time, was just melted down with all the rest.
So what should we take away from all this? I think it's about a lot more than just a kill count. It's a really powerful story about how technology can push our human senses beyond their natural limits, and how absolute, unwavering trust between 2 people can conquer even the darkest, most terrifying situations.
Which brings us right back to the name of their plane, and leaves us with one final thought. Their whole story really forces us to ask ourselves, what does it truly mean to make borrowed time count?